Welcome into DRF Daily, DRF Sportsbook's betting live stream coming at you each and every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, breaking down some of the biggest games on the docket using DRF Sports Pro data. We have three fantastic games on the docket here today. Starting things off with number 12 BYU as they travel to number 25 Oregon. We're then going to Michigan State at Washington, and then we're heading to Texas for Miami against Texas A&M. But before we dive into today's slate of games, we just want to remind you, as always, you can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever there's social media, we are there as well. Check us out at DRF Sportsbook. That's at DRF Sportsbook everywhere on social media, TikTok, Twitter. We're always breaking down the latest news, the latest betting angles, line movements, sharing out our exclusive trends, everything like that on DRF Sportsbook on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Wherever you're on social, we're there. Give us a follow. You can check us out right there. So, enough beating around the bush. We won't talk about what happened last night. It was a bad night for betting. We're looking to bounce back here on this Saturday. It is a completely full slate of college football action. Starting things off today, some noon games. UConn travels to Michigan. Don't tell me Michigan schedules an extremely cupcake schedule. They play UConn. They're only 47.5-point favorites in that one. Baylor's playing at noon. Georgia, South Carolina kicks at noon. A lot of great action kicking off at noon and takes us through the rest of the day. But we're starting things off today with number 12 BYU at number 25 Oregon. Oregon's a 3.5-point favorite. The total is set at 58, and that smells a little fishy, if you ask me. I think they're trying to get me to go BYU, and I'm going to go BYU in this scenario. BYU is the better team. Oregon got throttled week 1 against Georgia, and then coming off of that, they didn't look, fantastic against Eastern Washington. Yeah, they hung up 70 points, but the offense wasn't necessarily firing on all cylinders, considering that their yards per play is just 5.8 yards this year, and that is with a 70 spot. So either Georgia just shut them down completely, or the Bo Nix experiment is not going all that great in Oregon. If you look at what our betting data is saying about this game, it likes this game more as a pick'em. There is no gold star best bet with this. The edge isn't on either side, but our power line does believe this is more like a pick'em game. And then you look at our simulators. Estimate number 2 has this one as a 34-34 game, which will hit the over. And then BYU-Oregon in estimate number 1, Oregon loses by 2 points. So our game simulators are on BYU. Our power line makes this a pick'em, which is why I'm all over BYU plus 3.5. They have a murderer's row of who's who for this schedule. They have Arkansas later on in the season. They play a lot of good teams. They come in after beating USF at USF. They come in after beating Baylor, winning and covering both of those games. They average 6.8 yards per play this season. They're a more battle-tested team. Going on the road to Oregon is, of course, going to be a tall ask. That is not the easiest place to play. But at the same time, they're more battle-tested. They have more under their belt. They're not coming off of a cupcake FCS game. And on top of that, Oregon has not been able to string together big-time wins or big-time offensive outputs in back-to-back games. They're 1-8 against the spread after going over the total the game before over the last 3 seasons. That's not a good look. That is more than just a coincidence being 1-8 in those scenarios. And Oregon went over the total last week by themselves against Eastern Washington. And BYU's coach Kalani Sitake is 10-3 against the spread as a road underdog. I really think BYU, they're the better team in all aspects. They've played a harder schedule. Give me BYU plus 3.5. I think that's the easiest bet of the day. And we're really sticking to fishy lines here today. Number 11, Michigan State, is a road underdog against Washington today, and I'm not entirely sure why. Michigan State comes in plus 3.5. The total is set at 56.5. Michigan State has come in off of a win, a shutout win against Akron, 52-0, covering the spread in that one. They also covered the spread in week 1, beating Western Michigan 35-13. So Michigan State comes into this one looking really solid. Washington, on the other hand, comes into this one also 2-0, 2-0 against the spread as well. Kent State, they won 45-20, and against FCS school Portland State, they crushed them 52-6. So both teams come into this one 2-0. Washington still outside of the AP poll, still outside of the coaches poll, looking in, but they come into this as a 3.5 point favorite. This will be the second time these teams are playing each other since 1992, so there is no history here. They don't really know each other. Essentially, a one-off game that we're not going to see all that often. The line did open at Washington -2, so this is interesting. The line opens at Washington -2, and only 37% of the public's on Washington, but the money has been on Washington apparently, because that's moved them all the way up to now -3.5, a whole 1.5 point jump. So very interesting stuff there. And Kalen DeBoer, Washington's coach, is 8-1 against the spread after playing a home game. So there's stuff going there. It's a homestand. They didn't have to travel this week. Michigan State, on the other hand, is traveling from East Lansing all the way to Seattle, Washington. So a big jump there for Michigan State. But all that being said, I like the Spartans to cover this one, to win this one. But I'll go Michigan State plus 3.5. It's fishy for sure. The money's on Washington. The public's on Michigan State. Normally, I like to fade the public in this spot. But, I mean, look at this too. Our data's all over Michigan State at -3. They think Michigan State you're getting 6.5 points here. With Michigan State at plus 3.5, it's more like Michigan State -3. Although our game simulators like Washington to win. In estimate number 1, you see it right there. Michigan State loses by 5. In estimate number 2, Michigan State loses by 5. But our power line is on Michigan State -3, and I'm going to ride with the power line here. I'm not sold that Washington is necessarily legit. Michael Penix Jr. is a fantastic quarterback. He won the quarterback battle coming into the season. But I think Mel Tucker has a more well-coached team, a better team overall. Going on the road is going to be tough. Going into Seattle, going into Husky Stadium, it's always a tough place to play. But give me Michigan State plus 3.5 to cover here, and I'm loving it.